everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Sean Lowery Show. So I'm starting off, and I have a confession to make, and it's that I'm an idiot. It's true, I'm an idiot. So I have been having a lot of success in business, and I've been watching my brain closely over the past 5 to 7 years, and I think I've came up with a formula on how to become a smart person if you're an idiot like I am. So first of all, smart is the hardest word to define. Are you smart if you get high test scores? Are you smart if you're rich? Are you smart if you've figured out how to be happy? It's complex and it's not easily defined, but obviously having a great functioning mind is desirable for everybody. So I looked up the definition of smart. All right, so the dictionary definition is a color varied, sugar coated candy produced by Nestle. Sorry, I looked up the definition of smarty. I told you I'm stupid. But yeah, it's a hard word to define. So there's a category of mathematical geniuses, people, Albert Einstein, Stephen Hawking, that janitor from Good Will Hunting, he's wicked smart. But those brains are like the LeBron James body of brains. I'll never have the brain where I can program a computer from scratch. I may hire someone to do that. But that level, just born with brains that have a computing power, that's unattainable for an idiot like me. But I believe that anybody can mold yourself into somebody smart. So you basically need to pay attention. You can't be lazy. You have to think a lot and kind of be hyper rational and desire to be like this. But if you desire to be somebody who is not smart and then become somebody who's smart, I came up with 4 specific points to help you do that. And this is kind of what I've done over the years. All right, so here's number 1. Number 1 is to eliminate all bias. So I've said this before, but I like to treat fear and bias like it's a golf ball. I like to stare at it for 10 to 15 seconds and then just smack it away as far as I can. So as far as fear goes, that one's actually easier to deal with because it's really easy to identify. We're evolutionarily wired to be like in a small tribe, and our emotions are so outdated. So, people are scared of public speaking because the brain is wired to think that they're in front of a crowd, begging or pleading not to get kicked out of the tribe, stuff like that. But the skill to acknowledge the fear and then remind yourself of your dumb evolutionary brain and then ignore the fear, you have to eliminate fear and it's easy to identify. But the same exact strategy should be used for personal bias. But the problem is that it's much harder to identify bias than it is to identify fear. But if you can master this, I promise you will be so much smarter. So the main problem a lot of people have is their self-bias. People get caught up in their own ideas. Have you ever heard the quote, if you want somebody to do what you want, make them think it's their idea? And this is so true. So you have to practice a lot in order to be good at this. And you don't need to be one of those mathematical whiz kids. This is something anyone can teach themselves. So you should be reevaluating your thoughts all the time and get comfortable admitting when you're wrong. That's a big part of bias also, not wanting to admit when you're wrong. And if you can eliminate that, then that's key. That's why I'm so comfortable with calling myself stupid. It's so empowering. If you're wrong, you're wrong, and you don't judge yourself for it. And the hardest thing is when you've put in a lot of work, or if you've put in a lot of effort, or you put in a lot of support to something, and then you just buckle down and believe in that thing when there's obvious facts against it. All right, so this goes for people with like their political candidates and beliefs. But here's the best example I can think of, and that is sports. So I grew up living and breathing sports. My teams were Notre Dame, the New York Yankees, and the New York Jets. The 12-year-old version of myself would actually be pretty disappointed in my current take on sports. So over the past few years, I've been shying away from becoming a big sports fan because it's really the most biased thing you can do is cheering for one team. My team's the best. I love my team. Oh, I hate that player. I hate that player. And then he comes to your team and you're like, oh, I love that player. So obviously you're being biased by loving your team, no matter what the situation is. And yes, I understand that this is fun and sports are just for fun. But if your brain is biased in that element, it's training the brain to be like that in business or something more important. And that is deadly. So a good example for me is my business used to be United Tees, and it was 4th of July, patriotic tank tops. It was more for guys. And now my business is United Monograms. It's all for girls. And, I'm not a big fashion guy. I'm not a girl, but I made a business decision. And I made a decision that's something that was better for business. even though it wasn't something that I like more. So I'm proud of that decision because I didn't have any bias there. But I do this so much, sometimes I even think it's a flaw. So I'm always open minded to new thoughts. I'm always questioning myself. And that being said, I'm 1,000% sure that there's something that I could be doing better with this. I'm sure there's something right now in my business that I'm not properly evaluating because I'm just used to it and I'm being biased. And I need to think about it more. So, business is all about making decisions quickly. So, the better you are at identifying and eliminating or smacking away that bias, the smarter that you will be. The better you get at it, the faster you will be thinking. You'll be more ahead of the curve, ahead of the competition, ahead of the market. So, eliminate personal bias. Admit to being wrong, except if you've wasted time, and you will be a smarter person, I promise. So, work on this. Identify the bias, eliminate the bias, and you will be smarter. So, number two, so think for yourself and don't need the approval of others. So, identifying personal bias is hard, but identifying your own thoughts, it's even harder. So, most people's thoughts aren't their own, and that's just a fact. And I'm guilty of this too. I might hear something and repeat it and act like I said it, but really I just heard it. So, I promise if you make this part of who you are, your brain will start to work better. So it's natural for people to want the approval of others. That same pesky evolutionary brain desires approval of the group. So if you have an idea and you say it around a group of peers and it gets shot down right away, you might remove that thought. And this is when you need to think about the idea without any bias. But it's harder when the people around you are against it. And that's another level. But I say fuck their approval. Fuck it. Unless they are right. So you got to think about it for yourself. Even if you're dumb, this is still a good practice that will make you smarter. So I have a stupid ass story for an example of this. So I went through this stage where I was campaigning about this to just my friends and casual conversations. And I said that you can easily put the fork on the plate when you're cooking food in the microwave and it will be fine. And you could just leave your metal fork there. And I swear for like a year, this never caused me a problem. And every time people saw me put something in the microwave with a fork, they're like, "What are you doing? Oh my God, it's going to spark a fire." But I was like, no, I don't care what people say. I don't know if it was my microwave at the time or what it was, but I swear for a year or so, I always did that. Whenever I microwave food, I had my metal fork on the plate and I had no problems. And I didn't understand why I couldn't do it. And my results seemed fine and I didn't care about the approval of others. And it actually kind of became like a thing for me. I would bring it up at parties and every single person called me an idiot. And I was convinced they were idiots. So eventually, after college, I went to a trip to New Zealand and I was in a hostel and I put the microwave on and I had my fork in there and it started sparking flames and the place almost exploded. So I really haven't been doing it since then. Now, obviously, this is a dumb story and I'm an idiot with this, but I was young and this is when I started to kind of think for myself like this. And then I was just thinking, but how many other things in life do we do just because? Think, why are you doing the things that you're doing? Do you understand why you're doing them? If you don't want to get smarter, you're honestly probably fine just going through life, doing what is expected of you, and just listening to other people. But if you want to be smart, you got to start questioning the root of everything, filtering it through your own brain. And don't do it just because others approve of it or just that's because how it is. That fork story is such a dumb story, but I'm proud of it because that's when I started to think for myself and question everything. So that's number two. Think for yourself and you don't need the approval of others. Filter things through your own brain. And even if your brain isn't that smart yet, still just the practice of filtering things through your own mind, that will make you smarter. That will make you become a smarter person. It'll make your brain more powerful. All right, so number three is don't lie to yourself. So in order to eliminate bias, you can't lie to yourself about your idea being the best just because it's yours. In order to think for yourself, you can't lie about the root of your thoughts. If you think something is your idea and you defend it, but you're really just agreeing with someone else or a common belief, you're basically lying to yourself at that point. And you're lying that it's your idea. So when it comes to being smarter, which is the whole point of this episode, how to get smarter. Lying in general has nothing to do with it. That's fine. But lying to yourself is where the danger comes in. I like to think about this stuff. I like to think about how your brain operates. And I like to say that I have a straight shot to my dome. That's how I say it. I have a straight shot to my dome. So I'm known to be straightforward. I'm known to be honest. Some may say I'm unfiltered. And this is because I've trained my brain to be like this. That pathway from what's going on to the core of my truth, I like to look at it as a clear path. I like to imagine it like a bullet train to the truth. And this helps with everything. It helps with eliminating bias. It helps for thinking for yourself. And small casual lies, they can start putting cobwebs on this path. That's what I like to call them, cobwebs. My path to my brain, my truth is a straight shot. And every time you lie, you're putting cobwebs, even something little in a conversation where people will be like, hey, have you ever heard that song? And it's just easier to say, yeah, for the flow of the conversation. My brain doesn't do that. My brain will be like, no, what song is that? And so I think every time you lie to yourself, even in the most small way, one cobweb gets put on that path. And the more cobwebs you have, the harder it is to get to your truth. And that's why I don't like cheering for sports teams, because even though it's in good fun, my machine, my brain, it's being biased. And it's making my brain more prone to being biased and more comfortable with it. And then when I need that brain to make a business decision or something important, I like to just never have my brain be in that state where I'm making small white lies or being biased for fun. So, if you do lie in a situation, that might be wrong morally, but as far as your brain, it's okay as long as you tell yourself right away. Be like, I just lied. That is a way to remove the cobweb. So it's really this simple. If you're somebody who lies to yourself, you don't have the ability to become a smart person. So number 3, don't lie to yourself. And the last one, number 4, is just respect the power of the brain. Don't underestimate the power that your brain has. So this is a scientific fact. I heard this. I think only about 5% of the brain is understood by scientists. The brain is not understood, and it's a really, really powerful thing. It has amazing powers. It can be shifted. It can be shaped. And being born a math whiz is rare, and maybe that can't be learned. But if you're born a stone cold idiot like me, you can make yourself smarter. And it sounds corny, but the power of belief in the brain is overwhelming. So start believing you're smart. Use these tools, practice them. You have to be consistent. Don't be overly confident and just wrong. It's okay to be confident as long as you know you're working on something, and be consistent, and you will become smarter if you keep telling your brain. So I like to always think of that scene from Space Jam, where all the Looney Tunes, they're all nervous. They're about to play the Monstars. They have no confidence. And Bugs Bunny pulls Michael Jordan aside, and he's like, yo, Michael, give him this. Give him this water bottle that says Michael's secret stuff. And Michael's like, Bugs, it's just water. And Bugs like, trust me, MJ, just give it to him. So MJ gives it to all the Looney Tunes, and they're all pumped, and they're riled up. They start believing that they just drank a secret potion from the basketball god, Michael Jordan, and they go out and play amazing. So it's kind of just a cinematic example of believing how powerful it is. So in this situation, Bugs Bunny had to kind of trick them, and he had to pull that trick on other people. But you have to do this to yourself. So you have to believe you're a smart person, use these tactics, and the brain becomes what it thinks about. So use these tactics and believe you're a smart person. And that little bit of believing that you're a smart person is a part of all of this because it's very powerful. All right, so those are the 4 points. So a summary of them. Number 1, eliminate all bias. Become good at identifying your own personal bias. Learn about it, get good at it. Self-bias is definitely the hardest, but then identify it, notice it, and ignore it. Number 2 is think for yourself and fuck the approval of others. My fork story is the dumbest story ever, but I had to understand it for myself. I didn't just believe it because other people told me, and just doing that practice can make your brain work better if you try to get to the root of everything. Number 3, don't lie to yourself. A brain that lies to itself can't be a smart brain. And number 4 is use the power of the brain. It's an amazing thing. So eliminate bias, think for yourself, don't lie to yourself, use the magical power of belief in the brain. And those 4 things are things that can take me, an idiot, into somebody who's smart, who's built a big business, and I think anyone can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do it. All right, so that's the formula. And just like Michael Jordan had his secret stuff, these 4 points right here, this episode, this is Sean's special stuff, Sean's secret stuff. So I appreciate you guys listening, and that's episode 5. I'm having fun with it. I appreciate you listening. Thanks, guys.